Houston, what are you doing?
What do you mean?
Why are you working on a review for Hitman 2?
Because it's the sequel to the first one?
Yeah, so why not skip to Hitman 3? It's more relevant and it's probably better than Hitman 2.
Uh,
Oh, you don't own Hitman 3, do you?
uh,
And you're struggling to think of things to critique the game for.
uh,
And you're trying to get more mileage out of the sprite sheet you made for Agent 47?
so yeah, here I am once again doing another review for Hitman due to popular demand. And keeping up with the trend of being late to the party, I'm doing Hitman 2, despite Hitman 3 being infinitely more popular and more relevant. Oh well, can't blame me for being consistent at least. And yeah, the game is better than the first in practically every way. The story is better, by which I mean I actually paid some amount of attention to it because it had a much stronger influence on the locations of where the maps take place, unlike the original where the locations were only there because the Shadow client said so. The levels are more geared towards the story. For example, one mission requires us to find a target, but we have no idea who he is and he is trying to stay off radar. So naturally, the map would need to be a place with a high population density, so the target would be much harder to find, which is why the level takes place in Mumbai. Aside from that, the levels are also just really good. Not too large like Sapienza, and even in the ones that are quite big like Santa Fortuna, the targets are spread out instead of all being in one main area, so that way the whole map gets used to some degree. I also like how the levels feel more experimental in nature. You can tell the devs really wanted to try different things, and not just by adding a new objective like find a hidden target or look for the evidence, but in how the maps feel. For example, one map is set on a racetrack and one of your targets is one of the racers, and you can actually dictate whether or not she wins the race by either shooting a rival or disqualifying them. It's really cool and plays into the idea of you are the one in control of how things happen. I mean, sure, you do kind of learn all this in mission stories, but when you realize that one of your targets is effectively on a timer, it really starts to make you think and assess your situation. Also, yeah, mission stories are back, which I'm of mixed opinion. I like the new comedic approach to them, like when you disguise as an intern going for a job at a bank and they asked 47 to describe the pictures in front of him. In one of them, he just outright described himself as a killer, which I'm pretty sure is the last thing you're supposed to do as a hitman.
Pick any of the remaining cards that make you think of execution, please.
I'll pick this one.
Good choice. Tell me, what is the first thing you see here? Just the very first thing that comes to mind.
I see a figure in a large coat. Perspective skewed, as if I'm looking at him from the ground. He's got something in his hands.
Go on.
He's armed. Dual firearms. Large caliber pistols.
I see. What else do you see?
He's just finished a job. Perfectly executed.
And who is this man?
It's me.
Or on another level where you disguise as a real estate agent and 47 shows the ruins but talks about it in the same way a killer does. It's quite funny at times just listening to 47 trying to act like a normal human being and not an emotionless sociopath. However, I'm not a fan of how nearly every mission story now requires some kind of disguise because it means it's not possible to do SASO with them. But thankfully the maps are good enough that doing SASO is nowhere near as frustrating as maps like Colorado or Bangkok from the first game. However, I'm sorry Hitman 2, but I am going to have to deduct some arbitrary points from my arbitrary score because despite the trilogy being called World of Assassination, 3 out of the 8 maps are set in the United States. Although, despite the obvious subtext of a game about killing rich elites who work for secret corrupt organizations and are also sometimes just flat out terrorists, having 4 maps take place in America, like I said, the levels are still good. Except for you, Colorado. Now, I'm not going to talk about the gameplay because it hasn't really changed at all from the original, aside from the addition of the sniper assassin in game mode, which is alright, I guess. Basically, you snipe targets and cause havoc. You have a timer of around 15 minutes and cannot move from your starting position. There are 3 maps, and yeah, like I said, it's fine when the game behaves and the ragdolls don't go flying in the wrong direction, which might be why there were only 3 maps made for it. So instead, I'm going to go through each level and briefly discuss how I felt about them. After all, Hitman 2 for the most part is a level pack, and I won't be talking about SASO much because almost all the levels are great for it, so there's not much that I can say, and also because I realize not everyone cares about SASO. And up first, First, we have Hawke Bay, New Zealand, where we are tasked with breaking into a house in the middle of nowhere and stealing some data on future targets. This level is quite unique because when you first start off, you are the only person on the map. No guards, no civilians, nothing. The people only arrive after you collect the data, after which you are tasked with eliminating the homeowner and leaving the map. It's a very simple map because it's meant to be more of a tutorial for those returning to the series to get back into the swing of things. I mean, you are literally granted access to an armory filled with various weapons, including a fucking katana. All in all, a solid little introductory level. Next up is the previously mentioned Florida racetrack level, and yeah, this one's pretty good too. If the first level was a tutorial, then this is meant to be more like the first actual level. It's got no fancy objective, just kill the 2 targets and leave. But as mentioned, you have complete control over how the race ends. You can disqualify the target or the competition depending on how you want it to play out, or you can even snipe her while she is racing and send her car flying. The other target has nothing unique to him and is the more standard of the two, but it's still a solid level. And up next is Santa Fortuna. Similar to the previous level except with one additional target. Like I said before, this level is like Sapienza but done right in my opinion. Each target is in a different area of the map and each area presents its own little challenges. Like the one near the slums in a small confined house, meaning you don't have a lot in terms of movement and need to be careful when navigating the tight spaces. There's also one in the fields that has a lot of cover to hide in, but if you get too close to enemies when moving through them, they will get suspicious and come to you. And unlike luring a target with a coin, once they are onto you, it's very hard to get them off you. And finally, the one in the mansion that has a lot of large open areas with guards, staff and guests everywhere, so it's all about picking your moment and when to move from point to point in the blind spots. And once again, it's a solid level. Like I said, I don't have many complaints, hence why I haven't compiled the maps into a top 3 like I did in my last video. And next up is Mumbai, and this is the first level to utilize a unique objective. In this case, it's find the identity of and eliminate the maelstrom. And the other 2 targets are well spread out, with one being in a tower and the other one being in a train yard, and are both fairly challenging in their own regard. The level itself is dense and packed with people, and you really get that sense of poverty when walking around and seeing the NPCs just doing their day-to-day things. And number 5 is Whittleton Creek, USA. This one is particularly interesting because unlike previous levels where it takes place in large areas of cities or at events, this one is just a quaint suburban street with 2 targets, one that stays in his house and one that mainly roams the neighborhood. You also have to go around and find 3 bits of info for plot related reasons. Not really much to say here, solid level overall. And now we get to my least favorite map, the Isle, which isn't to say it's bad, it's just not for me. Personally, I found the level design confusing and the tight corridor tower to be annoying to navigate, but I like the gimmick of you can't kill one of the targets and instead have to escort him to the boat once the 2 actual targets have been eliminated. The level looks beautiful though. I like the juxtaposition of the ruined castle and the high-class bars and whatnot. It's visually impressive. But the map design is ultimately what kills it for me, and this is one of the 2 maps I didn't do SASO on because of how confusing the map layout was in my opinion. And that map is followed swiftly by my favorite map, The Bank, which is one of the 2 DLC maps. This map is great because 1, it's small and not confusing, and 2, it's a motherfucking bank! I also like how the level plays and the objectives. See, you only have 1 target, but the objective is the real part of the show here. Basically, you have to collect data, and there's 2 main ways of doing this. Either by killing 3 people and grabbing the data drives, 1 being the target and 2 lackeys, which the game does not highlight and you must go around and find them. Or my favorite way, break into the vault and steal the drive off the rack. Both can be done either loudly or quietly, each with their own benefits and drawbacks. The drives are concealable, but you must kill the targets, which can be hard when doing it quietly. And doing it the vault way is easier to access, but if someone sees you holding that drive, they're going to be asking questions as to how exactly you got your hands on that. Oh yeah, did I mention that it's a bank? And if you thought I wasn't going to do the challenges to unlock the heist to start, then you clearly don't know me very well. But I digress, and finally we have the resort level. This one goes back to basics, with 3 targets spread throughout the map, one who roams the guest housing, restaurants and spa, one that roams between a private island and gym area, and one that hides off in a mansion. The only real drawback of this map is its lack of mission stories. Only 5, but the map is nice overall and very aesthetically pleasing. Overall, Hitman 2 is fucking cool. It has much better levels overall, and despite the lack of real gameplay innovation aside from the sniper assassin game mode, which I didn't hate but didn't enjoy it, just kinda meh really, it's great, and I really recommend you go and try it. Still really need that supermarket level though.